It's been 2 years since former Prime Minister Boris Johnson signed his Brexit trade deal and triumphantly declared that Britain would be prosperous, dynamic, and contented after completing its exit from the European Union. Brexit would enable UK companies to do even more business with the European Union and would leave Britain free to strike trade deals around the world while continuing to export seamlessly to the EU market of 450 million consumers. In reality, Brexit has hobbled the UK economy, which remains the only member of the G7, the group of advanced economies that also includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United States, with an economy smaller than it was before the pandemic. Hello everyone and welcome back to Mayar Media. Today we're going to talk about the four main impacts that Brexit has had on the British economy. 1. Brexit has affected UK-EU trade. It's erected trade barriers for UK businesses and foreign companies that used to use Britain as a European base, and as a result, reduced the overall amount of trade that Britain engages in with the EU. 2. Brexit has contributed to labour shortages in Britain by reducing the free movement of workers. A study by the think tanks Centre for European Reform and UK in a Changing Europe suggests that there are 330,000 fewer workers in the UK as a result of Brexit. 3. Brexit has also affected Britain's standard of living by creating shortages, reducing the variety of goods available to Britons, creating inflation. And 4. Brexit has caused Britain's overall economic growth prospects to go rather bleak. Brexit has reduced investment into Britain, and according to a British Chambers of Commerce survey of more than 1,168 businesses, 77% said that Brexit has not helped them increase sales or grow their business. Let's dive deeper into the impacts that Brexit has had on the different facets of the UK economy. The UK decided to exit the EU in 2016, and trading relations between the UK and the EU changed after 1st January 2021. The UK's decision to choose a hard Brexit with the departure from the single market resulted in the loss of 4 trade freedoms, those in labour, capital, goods, and services. UK-EU trading relations are now governed by what is called the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, or TCA. Under the TCA, trade between the two is still free of tariffs and quotas, but the UK is no longer part of the EU's single market or customs union. As a result, trading costs between the two have increased considerably, and more red tape has made trade more difficult. Companies trading with the EU now have to face new rules, new paperwork, and new checks, resulting in a dip in how much the UK trades with the EU. The impact of Brexit on UK-EU trade is perhaps best illustrated with an example. Little Star is a British company that makes children's jewellery and was doing very well in the Netherlands and planned to expand to France and Germany. After Brexit, however, only 2 of its over 30 Dutch customers were willing to handle the costs and paperwork of obtaining the company's stock. The time it takes to ship products has also increased considerably from 2 days to 3 weeks, while import duties and sales taxes have made it more difficult to compete with European jewelers. As a result of these challenges, some British companies have stopped exporting to the EU altogether. This is reflected in trade-related statistics. Goods trade flows between the UK and the EU have dropped by almost 20%. UK exports to the EU declined by nearly 14% in 2021 compared with 2019, and services fell by 7% in the same period. The variety of UK products exported to the European Union also declined by 30% during the first year of Brexit, according to researchers at the London School of Economics. Imports from the EU declined by 18%, and trade as a share of the UK's GDP has fallen by 12% since 2019. The decline in exports, particularly to non-EU countries, suggests that UK businesses may be less competitive post-Brexit as a result of higher supply chain costs. Britain's poor post-Brexit performance also caused the pound to devalue, resulting in higher import costs and inflation, but no net positive impact on exports. As a result, while other parts of the world benefited from a post-pandemic trade surge, the UK did not. As goods that were freely traded before Brexit now require strict checks and approvals, the UK's overall balance of trade has also taken a beating. According to the Office for Budget Responsibility's Economic and Fiscal Outlook, Brexit will cause the UK's trade to be permanently lower than it would have been otherwise. New deals have been signed with Australia and New Zealand, but are only expected to deliver a tiny boost to trade, and even that will take several years to begin having an impact. All in all, Brexit has significantly damaged the UK's trading ability, and recovery is likely to take years. Brexit has also affected Britain's labour market. Britain now has a shortfall of 330,000 in its labour force. Most of these people were previously employed in low-skilled jobs. While Brexit has led to an increase in immigration from non-EU countries, This increase hasn't been nearly enough to compensate for the loss of workers from neighboring countries. Research published in January 2021, however, found that there was a shortfall of around 460,000 EU origin workers, which was only partly compensated for by an increase in non-EU workers. This shortage of labour is illustrated well by this chart by Bloomberg, which shows that for the first time in the UK, the number of people that are unemployed is less than the number of job vacancies. The labour market shortfall in the UK is continuing to exist mainly in blue-collar sectors. The UK is also going through a cost of living crisis and is experiencing a lower overall standard of living because of higher costs and reduced variety in available goods. A comparison of food inflation in the UK and EU shows that ever since the TCA went into effect, food inflation has been consistently higher in the UK than in the Eurozone. And while inflation was high globally post-COVID, the UK nevertheless still experienced higher inflation than its European counterparts and is also now experiencing food shortages that other EU countries are not. The TCA eliminated tariffs on most goods, but introduced non-tariff barriers such as border controls, customs checks, import duties, and health inspections on plant and animal products. Previously, a farmer in Kent could send a truckload of potatoes to Paris as easily as to London, but this is no longer the case. A study by the Centre for Economic Performance found that food prices have increased by 6%, hitting low-income households the hardest. Brexit has also increased UK consumer prices by 2.9%, which equates to an increase of £870 per year in running costs for the average British household, while income per capita has declined by 1.37 to 2.9%. As I've already discussed, Brexit has had several negative effects on the UK economy. It has also harmed business investment in Britain, which remained at 8% below pre-pandemic levels even as 2022 drew to a close. As a result, the UK is expected to have one of the worst performing economies among developed countries in 2023. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development has projected that the UK's economy will shrink by 0.4%, placing it only ahead of Russia, which is under sanctions, while the IMF predicts that it will grow by a mere 0.3%. According to another study, Brexit reduced Britain's GDP by 5.5%, investment by 11%, and goods trade by 7% in the second quarter of 2022. This is costing Britain's economy £40 billion in tax revenues annually. This is an amount high enough to cover 75% of the spending cuts and tax increases announced by UK's Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt in November. The Office for Budget Responsibility estimates that the UK will ultimately be 4% worse off than it would have been without Brexit, and trade is projected to be 15% lower in the long run. These institutions attribute the low projections to high inflation and rising interest rates, which will likely reduce consumer and business spending in the country. The Confederation of British Industry has already reported 5 consecutive quarters of declining private sector activity, and this trend is expected to continue into 2023, as businesses continue to face rising costs, labour shortages, and weakening demand. Before I conclude, I'd like to ask you to please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. You can also support the channel by buying me a coffee. I'll put the link in the description box below. Now back to the video. Brexit has had a significant impact on the UK economy. It's affected everything from trade in goods and services to employment rates and investment. The introduction of the TCA caused a major disruption to trade in goods, while the new UK migration system represents a substantial tightening of controls on EU migration compared to the free movement which existed before Brexit. As a result, it has especially affected businesses that relied on skilled foreign labour. All in all, according to the British government's independent watchdog OBR, Brexit is expected to reduce Britain's output by 4% over the next 15 years compared to where it would have been if it had remained in the EU. Thank you for watching the video to the end. I will see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.